Hello and welcome to the Mysticast, where you join me, Jack Stafford, a student of metaphysics, as I talk to a variety of guests to better understand the teachings given by the Masters through the Aetherius Society, the cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, incorporating all yogas, Christian mysticism, theosophy, UFOs, and much, much more. Please note that this is an independent program not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, my guest is the writer Paul Young. Hello, Paul.
Morning, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
I'm good. So it's evening for you. You're in Australia.
It is the night time has started. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. Now I
Is
hate
it?
to tell you this, but we're having video problems here already with the flash. Um, okay, shall we just push on?
Yeah, let's continue. We'll just use audio
Oh,
because,
okay, all right.
like I said, I think you're just pumping out too much power here and you're
I
distorting.
think I am.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks so much for agreeing to chat to me. I know you from your writings in New Dawn magazine from some archive issues I was reading.
Yeah,
So you've been active in what do we say, the alternative space for quite a few years.
I have. Yes. Yeah. There's a few different ways. Alternative space, paranormal, mysticism. I
Mhm.
suppose mysticism was what's drawn me a lot throughout my life. Yeah,
Mysticism. Yeah, yeah. Same here. Metaphysics. Yeah, the reality is probably a good way to say it too.
it is. That's a
Yeah.
very good word. Yeah.
Not the materialistic prison, which is everything else.
That's right. Peter Kingsley wrote a good book called Reality. I don't know if you've read that.
No, I
Um,
haven't read that.
okay. Uh, no, let's stop like this. We're talking about Peter Kingsley right now.
Yeah.
You did send me, over the last week or so some information on Aetherius, and I believe I had it confused with something else when we first talked. But so thank you for sending that. And I see a lot of things, especially in the Eight Blessings, very strong parallels with Cosolargy with the American group. Yeah.
Yeah, I really
So
want to
very
talk to you
interesting.
about that. Yeah, it's very interesting how these, it's the blind. I always think of that parable of the blind men and the elephant. These have different parts of the truth, and they're all feeling different parts of the elephant. And when I came into sort of mysticism and uh, yeah, metaphysics, and as we said before, reality, and yeah, I came to the conclusion that it was kind of all true. All these ancient religions, like the worshipping of the sun, is true, and
Yeah.
all these strange things that you would like ghosts or the afterlife or all these things that I dismissed before. Everything was all based on truth because people's beliefs are based on experience now and what they believe, but they have to be backed up by experience. I found.
Exactly. I lean a lot towards mythology, whether it's from Egypt, but even the ancient Greeks, which these days is just completely dismissed as being parables, fairy tales. But I think there was something more with some of these great beings who existed. And we still have stories about them, whether it's from Egypt or Greece. Yeah, there's a lot. And I also noticed, just mentioned, did you use the word worship with sun? I was reading something from George King, and it very much aligns Cosolargy that what we do is not worshipping the sun, but it's some people find a devotion to the sun, a connection with the sun is probably the best putting it. Yeah, but not worship because people immediately think, oh, it's like worshipping pagan gods, but really not that kind of thing at all when you're
Mm.
connected with the sun. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading on the website. It says, "For us, the sun is an intermediary between what's within all of us and higher dimensions." This is on the Cosolargy
Oh, you've
International
been having a look at their
website.
site.
I
Yeah.
have, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So maybe you could just start the conversation. Tell us a bit about that and how you got into it, Cosolargy.
Okay. Well, mainly I got into it because New Dawn published an article, and if you know, it was started by Gene Savoy, Cosolargy, I mean, um, Gene Savoy Senior, and he passed away about 12 years ago, and his two sons took over, which is Gene Junior and then Sean. Now they did an interview with Sean Savoy in New Dawn, and when I read it, I thought, wow, this has a lot. There's a lot in there that just backing me, if that's the right word. So I got in touch with them. I ended up talking to John Savoy over Zoom, just like now. and he invited me to join. Unfortunately, by the time I got to a conference of theirs in America in Nevada in 2019, the two brothers had had a falling out, and
Uh,
the elder brother actually ejected Sean right out of the whole organisation, which made it a bit funny because I spoke to Sean after that, and he and I both agreed that it should have been two distinct avenues. One is the religion, and one is just, I won't say the scientific, but the practical methods of looking at the sun, absorbing the sun. And, but now it has, since it kicked Sean out, it's really become very much
oh
just the
no.
religion. And I don't want you to think I'm anti-religion, but there's a couple of things in there that I couldn't quite click with. But actually, while I was in the States in 2019, they ordained me, even though I wasn't really qualified sufficiently, and asked me would I become a representative in Australia. And the reason I've sort of let things lapse to a certain degree is because I wouldn't feel right about being the representative of the country if I didn't fully agree with their religious principles. And there's just a couple of things in there that I can't quite click with. So we're not on bad terms. I haven't had a falling out with them, but I've just sort of put it on the back burner, so to speak.
Mm, wow.
Uh,
So
yeah.
who was Gene Savoy, the original? He was kind of an
Well,
explorer guy.
yeah, he was an explorer. He did a lot of exploring in Peru and South America in general, but searched for a city for a long time called Vilcabamba, which is the lost city, which he eventually found. Um, and he did a lot of things like he tried to copy the map voyage of Thor Heyerdahl. In fact, I've got one of his books and I watched a whole video about his traveling on a raft to prove that Viracocha in the old days traveled around between the continents. Uh, and he also perhaps traveled between New Zealand and the eastern side of the Americas. So he was really an adventurer. When he was younger, he tried to enter the seminary and become a priest, but left for whatever reason. And of course, ended up starting his own religion. So look, there's an awful lot of his life. I admire the man. I wish I'd met him. Unfortunately, he passed away before I got over there. I should just say, Jack, by the way, I'm every now and then just clicking on the camera and it comes good. And when it flashes, I turn it off again. Is that all right with you?
I probably just won't use a video because,
I'll
yeah,
just leave it right off. Okay.
I think so.
I'll be
Yeah,
switching it on
because
and off, and I don't want to be distracting you as we talk. Yeah. Okay.
no, don't worry about it. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, and going back to what you said before is like all the ancient religions like worshipping the sun, and people that worship the Christians said there's only one true God, and then other people say there's many gods, and in the
Yeah.
Aetherius Society it's both true because there is the one God, but there are also many levels of evolution, and the sun is a
So
god to us.
that's exactly what I believe. And of course, there's the God with the capital G, and then there's the small G God, I call them. Um, it's there's so much. So many, it's a minefield is what I want to say in terminology, because there's so many different groups I've explored use different terms for the same idea. But
Mm,
basically, I don't think I'm a pagan by thinking some of those pantheons of gods might have actually been beings. And if while we're on that subject, that if I can say one thing that I'm very interested about with the Aetherius Society is that uh, the idea of other dimensions as opposed to the flesh and blood. Now, I've got to admit that I am a big fan of the television show called Ancient Aliens. I don't know if you ever watched that.
I haven't,
Um,
but I've heard of it, of course. Yeah.
I got on History Channel here and I love it when it's on. But the thing is that they keep pushing the idea that UFOs and ETs must be flesh and blood. And I guess they do that to make it more palatable for people who might not otherwise believe. But it's only in more some of their later episodes they start taking on board the fact that they could be ultra-dimensional rather than just interplanetary beings. And I think this whole idea, I also like the fact that George King talked about beings on other planets, which so many people are saying now. It seems like the idea is coming into the greater awareness that we think, oh, you can't live on Venus or Mars because you'd have to be able to breathe oxygen. There's no oxygen there. Well, of course, you're from different frequency, beings of different dimensions. Have that be true. So, I'm drawn more, and I will be delving further into Aetherius.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting you talk about that because when that's when I came into the society, it kind of answered all my questions because ghosts and where do you go when you die, and what about UFOs? Dr. King had said something interesting when he was a child. The teachers, they said to him that none of the other planets are inhabited, but then he said, well, why did God make them?
yes, okay,
Yeah, what are they there for? If there's, if you go to the highest mountain on our planet, you see there's tiny life forms. If you go to the bottom of the ocean, there's life forms. Every square inch of Earth, there is life. So to think that on the other worlds there is no life is just doesn't really stand up to examination, does it, to logic?
no, no, and I did just recall this afternoon while looking through things that I had written a blog a few years ago, and I wouldn't even know where to find it right now. Connecting, I'm not good at quoting verses from the Bible, and so I'm not going to try to quote. A
Hmm.
lot of somebody else had pointed out it was Jesus was said to have come from the morning star,
Yeah,
gone back to the morning star and the evening star, and if I that wouldn't really help if I was to quote verses where that's said in the Bible, but there's a connection between Jesus and Venus right there. Um,
that's good
yeah,
you picked
so
up on that. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah, and the
and and
Star of Bethlehem. The Bible is a UFO book.
well, yes, there's another Bible I'd rather not get too involved in,
Yeah.
but I think, but I find Genesis is interesting because you can match it as what was the man who wrote Planet X? Yeah, I'm having one of those problems with names today. Um,
I'll Google it.
yeah, the 12th planet. Uh, not von Däniken, but the other main one. Yeah.
Mm.
Uh, so,
Yeah, that's in the society too. They say it's there behind the sun is another planet, a younger planet that we will go to continue our evolution because we came from Maldek, which was this was the asteroid belt now because we destroyed it, and then
yeah,
we had because if you look at have you heard of Bode's law about the distance from the sun of all the planets that they're in at
right. Yes. Yep.
regular intervals, and yeah, there's a missing one, and that's now the asteroid belt. Uh,
Exactly, and that's why scientists say they predict what's there, but they can't see it. I do communicate regularly with a man called Jamal Schreier. I don't have heard his name.
no,
See, he's an astrophysicist and stationed in the University in Budapest, of all places. But he and I communicate regularly, and I helped him publish an article in the Nexus magazine a few years ago. Uh, but he believes very strongly in that extra planet that,
hmm,
but he goes along with man whose name I'm just escaping me. I should run to my bookshelf and pull one of the books out. Um, that it will get closer to us in coming years, and that we will see it. In fact, he even predicts it may turn out to be a brown dwarf rather than a planet. Opens up other possibilities of small planets going around it. But at this stage, it hasn't been located by telescopes, so it's just conjecture both by scientists and by people in the paranormal
hmm,
societies.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, that's where we'll go to when, according to the teachings, when um, because the Earth has taken her primary initiation halfway through her life, she gets a primary initiation, and that happened on July the 8th, 1964, I think. Um,
okay,
and so she has to go to to take her initiation. She has to go to a higher frequency, and so we have to vacate because we came in after we destroyed Maldek. We came here, and going back to what you were talking about, the realms. She had to create these realms, the physical realm, before we came here, there was Adamic man here, and their root chakra was the heart chakra. So they all the realm because each chakra is a realm of consciousness. So when you people talk about astral projection, they leave the body through a chakra and they go to because all the other planes of existence, like when you go between the life between lives, we exist right here, but just at a different frequency. And so each chakra,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so Adamic man who was here before, they didn't have like a digestive organs and reproductive organs. They just had they had an etheric interior, um, and so we have all these physical organs below the heart chakra because of we're more involved in our root chakra, and so. Um, but yeah, like I said, when I joined the society, that helped me understand that because when you go to Venus now, there's nothing there because they're at a higher frequency, they're at a higher chakra, they're higher. They don't inhabit this low level that we are on. So you go there, there's nobody there.
There is the other point that I also picked up on. I blogged about the scientists last year said they worked out that if there was life on Venus, it would exist about 40 kilometers above the surface because that would be the best part. And I thought, well, perhaps in my mind, I don't think everything would have to be down on the hard physical surface. Uh, I think there's still a lot they don't know about Venus actually, but it's interesting. They said it would be more chance of life existing around Earth, around
Yeah,
40 kilometers above, rather than right down on the surface. Yeah,
because there's all this dark matter and dark energy they can't find because it's at a different frequency. It's right there at the same, occupies the same space, but it's like a radio. You know, you turn to a different frequency, you get a different channel. It's the spectrums of light, isn't it? It's each
yeah,
ray of light is a different frequency and different. And we inhabit this. We can only see a very limited range of colors. I think there's about 300.
very limited. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, there are many more colors that we can't see, and that there are different frequencies of existence.
Yes. I saw a comparison once that if you did something the width of the United States or Australia, that band of Australia that our human eye can see would only be like a couple of meters along the center of it, and all the rest is they're going from infrared in one direction, ultraviolet in the others, into sound waves. Yeah, so really, our five senses of the human body don't give us much information as we'd like. Yeah.
So, what's the sun gazing in the Cosolargy?
Well, okay. Now here's another thing that when I first joined them, I said to myself, there is no way I'm going to do Sunday gazing because I'll injure my eyes. Well,
Hmm.
I grew up in Melbourne, which is 1,000 miles from where I am now. And one of my schoolmates I keep in touch with had been doing sun gazing and said you should try it. Um, so I did start doing it when I joined it because it's really essential if you're going to do the exercises. I'm not talking about the religious side of coachology here, but the practical exercises they give you, you really need to absorb the sun. Now, I found after a while I was doing it correctly. I was staring right at the sun. Well, you're not really supposed to. You're supposed to sort of put your eyes down and let it come into the top of the eye, but I haven't had any eye damage, which is interesting. I make sure I get my eyes checked at least once a year, and my eyes are still very good. So, except for having reading glasses. So, as far as I can tell, I've never done any damage, even the times I was doing it incorrectly. Uh, but the idea is that you're absorbing uh, certain rays and other properties of the sun that you wouldn't normally get. And they say the best time to do it are at sunrise and sunset,
Oh yeah.
particularly sunrise. Yeah. Like you shouldn't really be standing out at midday staring directly up at the sun. But, I felt I gained a lot of benefit out of Cosolargy, but you always, whenever I write about it, when they write about it, you always have to add the caveat. People read and think, oh, I'll go and look at the sun. Oh, you have to say, be careful. Don't go out and look at the sun without the right instruction on how to do it, and be careful how you do it. So, to anyone listening to you now, I certainly don't advocate just going from scratch straight out staring at the sun. But for people who want to take up, there are websites where and it comes into yoga. Now, there's a particular kind of yoga. Is it called Gaia? It's Gayatra. Now I'm having trouble with the memory today. Gayatra mantras or something like that, particularly from India about chanting
Trios or something
mantras.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like Gayatra. Yeah, but again, I don't have the right word there. But yeah, so there's certain methods you should use, and tuning yourself using mantras is not a bad way to do it. I must confess to being fairly ignorant with yoga, and I see that George King and Aetherius promotes certain kinds of yoga. Uh, just because I'm in bad physical conditions after a fairly bad accident, I always thought I can't really do yoga. But I guess, and I've seen some positions George King got himself into, and I wouldn't like to attempt those. But there are types of yoga out there where you don't have to
Well,
contort
yeah,
yourself.
it's pranayama and mantra basically. We don't do any
Yeah.
physical yoga. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, no. He said you should do exercise to stay healthy, but no, it's all
Yeah.
pranayama and mantra and prayer as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's something else I'll investigate further? Yes.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
interesting.
Let's see, just to finish off what you were saying, I remember what you were saying reminded me of something that came out in November last year. You know, science is always catching up with the metaphysicians. Is that there was a scientist, Dr. Mohammed Munib Khan, from one of the UK's leading specialists in cancer. He said that just 30 seconds of sunlight every morning could slash the chances of developing most types of cancer. Exposure to the sun's near infrared light between sunrise and 9 a.m. offers high level of protection to adults and children, more than eating 2,500 bananas or a kilo of Brazil nuts every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So of course the other thing is vitamin D. You get from the sun,
Mm.
and because there's such a scare campaign that I don't know about where you live, but here in Australia, um, now full disclosure, I've had a melanoma in my life, and I've had various other skin cancers besides the melanoma, and they call Queensland, where I live, the melanoma capital of the world.
Oh, really? Well.
But the thing is, it's caused a bit of a scare campaign now where people, when they live on the Gold Coast, people used to lie down at the beach in suntan, and now they're walking around fully clothed with sun hats and sunglasses
Mm.
and declaring the sun to be a bad thing. Now, there's got to be a happy medium in there where if you get out even for 20 minutes a day, mid-morning, for example, you'll absorb the vitamin D that you need. And that in turn activates other things in your body, particularly calcium doesn't break properly if you're not getting vitamin D. So I read something just in the newspaper here again the other day where the victim of skin cancer was declaring the sun to be bad, like enemy number one. And I think, well, it's
Yeah.
really not right, really the way to be talking about the sun.
No. We're solidified sunlight. Everything we are. We don't even own a fingernail. Can't claim
Well,
anything because we just solidified light.
funny enough, I made a note of that when I was going through your notes. I'm one of those note takers. I've got people over my desk here. But it's solidified because what's been going through my mind lately is, we use the term like spirit energy, and I see that George King used it, lots of Christians use it, and yet something beyond is matter, there's energy, then there's something else. And I've been reading up recently, like it's probably what you call a force. I'm not talking about may the force be with you, or maybe that's where that came from. But like magnetism is a force rather than an energy. So we know how to convert matter into energy, which we do. That's how we generate electricity. But converting energy back into matter is problematical, which is had me wondering if there were beings in other dimensions who were able to materialize and we could see them. There must be a way of converting converting energy into matter. But it's not an easy question. I'm not a scientist, so I won't get on my depth with that. But yeah, there's something else, and this thing I think
Yeah.
just called the force that turns energy into matter. Yeah.
There was a transmission received to Dr. King through a Saturnian, which is a very high which is the eighth freedom, is you're very highly evolved when you're a Saturnian, and yeah, it was called the one energy. And there is only one energy in the universe. This energy has many octaves of manifestation. It's the same energy that goes through the sun, makes the heart of small man beat. And so it's kind of it's, it's this metabolization of energy. So the sun takes the energy from the central sun of the galaxy, which takes its energy from even there's energy is everywhere, and then
Uh,
the plants take the energy from the sun, and then they break it down, and everything. We're all metabolizing energy as we metabolize truth, and I think there's this.
that's another thing that's being shown scientifically. And as I said, Jamal Schreier, the astrophysicist I mentioned, he's 100% convinced that our sun draws its energy from outside sources. And that goes along with
Oh, really?
theory. That goes along with a theory called the electric universe. Are you familiar with them at
No,
all?
no.
Okay, their website is Thunderbolts, and I don't think it's thunderbolts.com. I think it's thunderbolts.info. Would that be right? Thunderbolts.info, or maybe it's .info.com. You're looking up as we speak, are you?
Yeah,
Um, Thunderbolts info. That
the
come up for
Thunderbolts
you?
project. Yeah, the Thunderbolts
Yeah.
project. Yeah.
Okay. One of the guys, Walt Thornhill, who was instrumental in that. He was Australian, just passed away recently. He was getting a bit elderly. But Jamal Schreier has a bit of a difference with them. He doesn't agree with everything they say, but they all believe that all the stars are connected electronically. So we look at them as a box in the sky, whereas they're proposing there's a scaffold out there that they're actually perhaps all joined. There's a pattern that we don't see with our naked eye.
Oh,
Uh, and that it could well be. I think it's mentioned in the theory that there's a central sun, perhaps any energy, but rather than considering every star just to be an independent body on its own, uh, I'm just jotting down notes as we talk too. I know you can't see. By the way, I just came across that author I was trying to think of was Zechariah Sitchin when I was talking about the 12th planet. He he was sort of he wrote about the 12th planet in the
Zachariah
40s.
Citron. Zachariah.
Sitchin, Sittchin, Zechariah Sitchin. Yeah, so
Mm.
yeah, I just quite often I have good fortune in bookstores. Sometimes I wanted in a bookstore in Bangkok. And one of his books jumped out at the end. I ended up reading the whole series. But he also passed away in the last couple of years. But he took his not so much from the Hebrew Bible as from the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that goes back to what you were talking about before, Marduk, about the planet. So I think you'd find one in common with his writings. But he claims to have been able to translate the Sumerian tablets, and not all scientists agree with his translations, but he's certainly done a good job of picking up information.
Mm.
Can I just pick up, as I'm making notes, I thought you just mentioned Saturn before, and I noticed that in George King's writings. You're probably aware of this gentleman in England called David Icke. You would
Oh,
know
yeah.
about him.
Yep. Yep.
Now, he sort of pinpoints that as being the place where all the bad stuff comes from, and almost equating the word Saturn with Satan in some ways.
Oh, no,
Um,
no.
but they're sending out all the bad vibes to Earth and controlling us from there. So, but I don't feel that intuitively myself. I mean, it's
Mm.
very interesting planet Saturn, as are moons. But just thought I'd throw that in the mix as well.
Yeah.
That's good things that I tend to just read his stuff online. I haven't really plowed through any of his books because they're rather large volumes, and I think you'd have to really be tuned in his wavelength to
Yeah.
get right
Yeah.
through them. Yeah, yeah,
It's so difficult to navigate. I mean, I've just really stuck to the teachings of the Aetherius Society because because there's so many. And I mean, Dr. King gave sermons every Sunday. He gave lectures. There's many books. So
yeah,
there's thousands of hours of material. I haven't got time. And also because, yeah, it's the teaching for the new age. It follows it fits in with the ancient teachings.
yeah.
The ancient Vedic teachings, and through theosophy, um, and it follows on from that tradition, but give more updated. So yeah, I get very confused if I go off track and read other things, and yeah,
Well,
it's
I perhaps guilty of having participated in too many different conferences and groups, uh, but just jotting down a few of them this morning, I was trying to see what parallels I might draw with Aetherius, and there does, if I'm not mistaken, George King did believe there's going to be a change in frequency coming on planet Earth before too long. Am I
yeah,
right in that?
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I've attended a few years in a row. I attended the Cosmic Consciousness Conference, which was held at Nauru, or used to be called Ayers Rock, in the centre of Australia.
Oh, wow.
Those people who conduct that have now moved off and are out to not Lord Howe Island, but the other island off the coast where Mutiny on the Bounty took place.
Mm,
Um, I've been to the Paradigm Shift conferences. I've followed a father and son called Stephen and Evan Strong, who were very involved with the Aboriginal Dreamtime connections with UFOs. A lady called Valerie Barrow, who used to channel beings from other areas. Now, Valerie's passed away last year. She was like in her late 80s, but she and I got on very well, and I used to connect with her at conferences.
mm.
But all these people, and particularly Stephen Strong, uh, and there, I'll throw Michael Salla, Salla. If you haven't heard of him, he has a website called Exopolitics. Uh, and I think a lot of his stuff would gel with Aetherius,
Mm.
except he doesn't have any particular teachings. He just trying to, yeah, if you look at exopolitics.org,
Could you send these
it's,
and I put them in the show notes because I'm sure there's people scrambling around for a pen now, and I
should
am
I
one of those. So maybe you could
send you
just
the links?
yeah, send me a little
Yeah.
list, and I'll put it in the show notes. So so anyone listening to this, just relax. I'll put them all everything he's mentioned in the show notes, because
Can I do that after we're finished talking? Not,
yeah, oh yeah, after we do it
so
when
I
I
don't have
upload
to
it.
multitask right now. Yeah, sure.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
Well, the ones I would do, well, the one I didn't really mention was the Nexus. I'm sure you're familiar with Nexus magazine in the UK. Uh, Nexus magazine in Australia is run by Duncan Rhodes. And I went there for the Secret History of Australia conferences. That may not be of so much interest, but Cosmic Consciousness, Paradigm Shift, Stephen
Mm,
Evan Strong, and that they've got their own site. Uh, Ellery Barrow's site is still going, Cosolargy. I'll give you all those. Yeah, okay.
yeah, brilliant, thank
Um,
you.
and then you'll know how confused I've been getting everyone else. So I
Well,
just kidding.
I mean, really, I'm like maybe my karma's different to yours, but I got very lucky in that I came to the society and they explain it very clearly because with theosophy, just as an example of a well-established,
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if you read the Secret Doctrines or anything like that. They're
But by Adam
Blavatsky.
Blavatsky, yeah, yep. Uh,
They're
no,
meaty. Yeah.
I bought a book that I thought was it, but there had to be a book about it. But yeah, I'm quite familiar with her and Alice Bailey and
Mm.
yes, the Masters. I've got several books here on the Masters. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
No, well, they're very. It's very. A lot of it's very opaque. It's very. It's very difficult to understand. It takes a lifetime of study. But with it's because these are the end. Because this is the end of days. Because we've I don't know maybe 1,000 years left or something like that. I have no idea of a time frame. I don't want to. I don't want to say
Yeah,
that. Dr. King didn't give specifics because it all depends on karma, the karma of humanity, which is a very fluid thing. Because after the ionosphere is coming down, according to the teachings, and that's going to change the Earth. Because
yeah,
after Lemurius was destroyed, the ionosphere was put in place, and then after Atlantis, the catastrophe of Atlantis, the ionosphere was strengthened. So we've got less and less energy from the sun. So we have less and less psychic abilities. Because every time you fail, you have to go back a classroom. You
right.
have to go down. You have to go down a lot steps to come back up. So every time we go down a bit further, so that when we come up next time, hopefully we get it right. Um, and so that's why the ionosphere is there, but it's got to come down because we're holding up the evolution of the Mother Earth, and so then we go to another world with which help give us more time because everyone needs some people need more time in a classroom and stuff. So,
I just read that this afternoon, coincidentally, on some of the material you had sent me. And that concurs with Cosolargy in as much as that we should be sending, streaming to the sun. And I think George King said it's not that the sun needs it, but we ought to be doing it. And Cosolargy is very much about that too. When they have their open air services there on the top of the mountains in the Sierra Nevada, they're projecting to the sun. And certainly no harm. I can't see there's any harm in doing it, even if you're not quite convinced of it. Another thing, while I was going through my magazine, I'm not sure which my article you read in New Dawn, but I picked up one. They asked me to write a side article to Robert Schoch. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Robert Schoch, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Schoch. He wrote an article. He's written books and documentaries, but his wife, and I think his wife's name might be Katie, it doesn't really matter what her name is, but together they wrote this thing, which was the lead article, that special issue of New Dawn, Is Our Sun Conscious? And then New Dawn asked me just to do a little write-up about sun worship throughout history to go along with it. But one of the things that they mentioned why they considered the sky, and he's quite scientific, is a PhD. One of the reasons he considers the sun could be conscious is that some of the most volatile things that could wipe out the Earth, some of the sunbursts, could be wiping us out if they're pointing at Earth, but they're quite often pointing away from us. And they sort of came to the conclusion, well, that happens too often just to be coincidence, but there's electromagnetic outbursts could be pointed away just to avoid wiping us out. And again, that's conjecture, but I like when scientific people think about these things, and the fact the sun could be conscious, as people now, including the Earth, might well be conscious here.
Yeah, it's definitely conscious in the teachings. The Master Jesus came back to give his updated teachings for the cosmic age, because obviously if he'd done it first time around, people wouldn't have got the ideas. But and then the Nine Freedoms explains how we go from one of the most interesting things I learned from the society is this spiritual evolution, because I've understood from Buddhism that once you become a Buddha, you're not reborn. You've merged
Exactly.
back.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
merge back with God. Wham bam. You've graduated, but that's really only one turn of the wheel, and then you go in enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, ascension. Then once you go through an initiation of ascension, you don't go through reincarnation, but you still go through incarnation. So it's not, you can decide your birth, not in through this compulsory reincarnation where we forget our past lives, but you go into incarnation, then you go into interplanetary existence, Saturnian existence, then you can live on the sun. And then after that, we're not told, but it's inferred that you evolve into greater and greater beings, merging your consciousness with others to form greater and greater beings. Earth is a living being, form planets. Planets evolve into suns. Suns evolve into, the galaxy is a living being.
Yeah.
And there's this evolution, and it kind of makes more sense that eventually you go back to God, because it's a whole lifetime of one long multi-life evolution.
And it occurs to me that Jesus didn't talk openly about reincarnation, although people have
Well, he did
found at least.
apparently. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
it's
and
taken
I'm
out
not
of the Bible. Yeah.
yes, you're right there. I'm not quoting verses, but people have picked up. Have somebody said, "What's this man done wrong?" And he said, "Well, it could have been something he did before he was born." And it occurs to me that perhaps he didn't preach about it because that wasn't the main goal, to keep reincarnating. And I think some of my friends who talk about reincarnation sort of almost look forward to their next incarnation, particularly some of my Buddhist friends in Thailand. I said, well, to me, that's not the goal, is to come back here
No.
again. The goal is to an end to the cycle and move on. So that would make sense, I think. But yeah, well, look, time is slipping away, as it normally does when I start talking. Uh, I'm just trying to think of a couple of other things that was going to bring up with you. Well, one I particularly liked that I read from the Aetherius was the Book of Records. And now I don't know if I read on further, will I find the word, oh, gee, I'm having one of those days today with mental blocks.
Mm.
What's, oh, the Indian word for when if the records,
Akashic records.
yeah, Akash, sorry. Thank you for that. I have days like this where I just remember blocks. I have just turned 70. Forgive me. Um, yeah, so the Akasha seems to me to be that hall of records, and people worry about what you've done in the past and karma. So maybe it's true you can't go back and change what you've done in the past. You can, I think, props calibrate it, bring a new frequency to it. Uh, it's part of your story, whatever has gone on in your life. So now the Book of Records, yeah, is that the same thing as the Akasha? Some people talk about the Akasha as being the stuff the universe is made of, like the ether. So again, it's about terminology here, but I know I just came across his mention of that. Um,
I
I
think it's stored everywhere. I think you've got the Akashic records, which is you can read once you yeah, once you've that's that's kind of the consciousness of the earth, I think. I'm not sure, but I know your subconscious. I heard you talked about the overself in one of your articles. I think I remember
I did, and that's a term I got for full brunt and not water. Yeah,
because
I like that term particularly. It appeals to me. Yes.
yeah, they talk about the exact same thing. You have a higher self, which is your your super conscious. You also have a supraconscious, which is unmanifested, but that's a
Yeah.
lot more. And then you have our conscious mind, which I'm talking to you with now, this idiot. And there's your subconscious, which remembers all of your past lives, and you have all the information right in you. And so, and when you judge yourself between your higher self judges you between lives, and it chooses your next incarnation based on the lessons that you need to learn. So yeah, you don't even need I don't even. I'm talking about way above my pay grade, but I don't even think you even need the Akashic records because you have everything. You are a miniature of the universe. The atoms in your body are
Okay.
based on a model on the solar system for a reason. It's
I,
you are a microcosm. You have everything.
I follow that line of reasoning. Yes, yes, that's what it sounds. Yeah. Um, I remember which of my articles you might have read in New Dawn
I think a
magazine
few of
was
them. Yeah, yeah.
but I mentioned to you in one of our earlier emails a while ago that I particularly wrote. Well, they asked me to. New Dawn said, "Would you write about the esoteric legacy of Australia?" And so a lot of those things I mentioned to you before, and I will send you the links to them. They may not be of much interest to your friends overseas because a lot of them are to do with Australia. And you just mentioned before the groups like Alice Bailey, but so you probably know the name Charles Leadbeater,
Oh yes.
well, maybe not. But so I think he was a theosophist. And I wrote a story not about theosophy per se, but about a place in the city called the Manor, which is still owned by the theosophists. And they came there about 100 years ago. And Charles Leadbeater declared that Australia was to be a special place. And for me, that sort of clicked because of something like the same problem I was like, no, that Australia was to be the special place. There would be a cataclysm or what he called a cleansing of the sanctuary.
Mm.
Then Australia would be this focus of the new world. Now, again, this guy who told me when I was young expected it to happen in the last century and it didn't. Um, and you just mentioned before dates. I agree. My good friend in Cosolargy in America, I talk about this sometimes. They're a very fraught exercise to be predicting dates because it's very easy to make a fool of yourself. And people
Yeah.
do. They say this, planet X is going to appear in the solar system next year, and 2 years go by and nothing happens. Uh, so we really don't want to be putting dates, but the things, as you said, can be deferred for different reasons to come more forward, perhaps. Uh, but there is a common theme among all those groups I talked to that there will be a change in frequency and change. There will be a period of ascension, yeah. And
Yeah. Which city are you
well,
in?
what city? Well, technically, the Gold Coast is a city, but I'm only about an hour's drive from Brisbane. So
Ah.
Brisbane was my home base when I was working, and Gold Coast is where it's full of retirees and holiday makers. That's
I've been through there. It's a lovely area. Yeah. But
and
we do have a group in Brisbane, so you could always.
I did look and I found them. I think there is a Mount Albany, or there's one of the suburbs of Brisbane. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, Megan there, I'm in contact with her regularly, and she's a lovely lady, and she
Okay.
could fill you in a lot more than I can. And
Okay. Well, what we should be listening to this podcast? So what
yeah,
I should.
I can send it
Okay.
to her, and I'll put you in touch. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Uh, okay. So what I was just going to mention, one of those articles I wrote, All New Dawn, the things that took place about 100 years ago, which is interestingly about the time George King was born. But if you go back to that time, that's when theosophy was blooming. Um, so many different things I found about that period before World War One. Between is that the Edwardian period? I think it is. Um, it's like when Ouija boards becoming big in America, theosophy was taking over, the New Thought movement was taking on in America, and a lot of those people were coming out to Australia, like Vivian Deacon, George Leadbeater, and they were bringing those ideas with them. So Sydney and Melbourne were quite good places to be at that time, and
yeah,
before we had modern technology, of course, they were going to their local council halls or wherever, and giving talks on Sunday nights. Uh, so as I delved in, and I'm glad they asked me to write about that period. It was just a very fascinating period in Australia's history, and of course in the UK and the USA as well.
yeah. There were all these psychic institutes in England as well, and it seemed that we went. You take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. I think there's all there's people pushing back now from the shall we say the dark forces, who really want us to want to keep the veil over our head, over our eyes, and yeah, they do
Yeah,
make advances. It's
it's
a tug of
easy
war.
when it's easy when I get caught up with these groups. So I say get caught up when I attend conferences, that you think the whole world is changing, the whole world is ascending
Yeah,
because you're with those kind of people.
right,
But
right.
you go back home, turn on the television, or open the newspaper, and you realize, no, really, 90% of the world is not into this stuff at all. So what becomes of them, I don't know, but we can't spend our time worrying about people who are not ready for it.
Well,
So,
I've
yeah,
heard that when people visit this world from other worlds, and they flick through the realms, you can understand instantly the karma of the earth, because the lower realms are much more heavily populated than the higher realms. There's a lot more real estate up there than below.
well, okay. Now, here's another lady I better put on my list and make adding, running out of paper here. Mary Rodwell is an Australian lady you may not have heard of. Um, I just can't remember the name of her website, but I'll find it and put it on the links. But she talked about, um, well, I think it originally began for what they called indigo children or star children. But I was talking to her at a conference, not while she was on stage, but over a cup of tea. And I said, how can it be that people have come incarnated here from other solar systems, even other galaxies? Because there's a particular rhythm on planet Earth. We have this rhythm of day and night, and not just day and night, but just the moon. If the moon wasn't where it exactly is, so we didn't have the tides, we didn't have. It would be very hard to come from a planet that was totally different to that, and incarnate in this. I think the moon has a very strong, not obviously it has a strong influence on Earth, uh, but so her idea is, and this is what she talks about a lot, is that so many kids being born with ADD and autism or whatever because they've incarnated from another place, and that's the problems they have. So she'd be worth your listeners investigating her work. She gives a lot of talks. In fact, I think Michael Sala had her over in America talking recently. But she does a lot of interviews with people, uh, and she talks to kids who have very clear experiences of being in other places, not other places, not just Saturn or Jupiter, maybe other solar systems, some from other planets. So yeah, uh, again, some of this stuff can be hard for people to accept, but people are interested in exploring her work.
Yeah,
Want to look at it, yeah.
maybe can't comment on her work, but I just know from the teachings of the society that to incarnate on this earth is very difficult. It takes because of our karmic situation. It takes, for example, Jesus, or to incarnate, you had to prepare his mother, his grandmother. You have to be prepared. The whole and lots of karmic manipulation. People have to take on karma, and then you have to prepare them because to give birth to an interplanetary being takes on. You have to be a purified channel. Um, yeah, it's not easy. Many people are claiming to be star seeds and things like that, but I think you can't interfere with the karma of the earth in that way. You know, we are at this level, and to come down to this level to serve you is a very rare thing. There are not many planetary ones incarnating on the earth.
Yeah. Uh, I was sent a book from an author in America. In fact, I'll just look up what we're talking now. That what you just mentioned about Mary preparing to bring Jesus into
Sure.
the world. Are we talking about the same thing here?
Yeah,
But yeah,
and also because you're so great when you come from another world. You're a Jesus, you're a Buddha, you're a George King. You know, these people come every couple of thousand years. People, you don't, you're not a schmuck going through. You know, it's like when you're ready to. People say, "I'm on my last life." You know, okay, if you've run a hugely successful company, you're a millionaire, you've written hundreds of books, you're a mathematical genius, you compose sonnets. You know, okay, then maybe you're ready to. It's it's this when you're raising of consciousness and the concept of a master coming from another world. They're a they're not a god, but they're a gods to us. You know, this. I mean, the intelligence of Jesus and the abilities. I mean, yeah, it's just beyond. You know, you're not all these people pretending to be saying they're star seeds. Yeah, it's
yes. That's become a bit of a thing. The book
devaluing
I'll just mention this book to you now because I wrote it in front of me. It's called The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception.
mm,
And the author's name, what we now define, here to a name, uh, by Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso. There's a good Italian name for you.
put it in the show notes.
Yeah, okay. We'll put that in as well. Yeah.
I mean, Dr. King, he was in a small village in England, and he upset the teacher because they have this metal iron bar that's they use for measuring things. You know, it's because it never changes shape. You know, it's a solid. And as a young child, he bent it. I mean, just because he had the could use the mind over matter, or they're performing miracles as throughout their life. You know, you look at Jesus, the story of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's these supermen. You know, in fact, I probably
But,
think the film Superman has an elements of truth in it. You know, so
yes. I wonder about a lot of things that come out of Hollywood.
yeah,
As I should, even just that saying, "The force be with you."
yeah,
But
it's a lot of truth.
so
All
so
you know,
so really, if we can bring that around in the circle back to what we talked about earlier about people being from higher dimensions, higher frequencies, uh,
yeah, it could be from
that's something.
higher realms. I'm sure. You know, you come back,
Yeah,
and
higher
this is
realms.
you think you're walking around in the slime here. You could be forgiven for thinking you know.
What occurs to me is that Hollywood, some people think it is being used to help prepare us.
Mm,
Right now, most people I read online in the USA are preparing for including Michael Salla, they're preparing for what they call disclosure. They believe that the US government is very soon going to come out and out everything they know about ETs and
mm,
UFOs. And I believe one of the reasons they haven't done so already, it's not because the world panicked. I think most people in the world now, if you were told some flesh and blood aliens had landed on the White House lawn, you'd probably say, oh, well, we were expecting that. But if you
yeah,
found they were from other dimensions, and they could have been right alongside you all the time,
yeah.
again, instead of pigeonholing this thing as ghosts, this thing is other dimensions, this is UFOs, if it all tied in together, that we find people are here and they are influencing governments, that would be a fairly big thing for a lot of people to swallow. So we'll see what the American government does in
Well,
the future. But yeah,
I think it's the government, the dark forces in the lower realms. They are the ones who we have to worry about, and that's and also just to say that in the society we want to delay the as much as we pray that it's as late as possible this quickening, because it gives more and more people a chance to evolve in that time. If the change happens tomorrow, it's going to be a lot less people going forward than potentially it could be. So
Well, that's one thing. This gentleman, Stephen Strong, I've been to the Father and Son, Stephen Evan. He says whenever he gives a talk, you really need to get on board now. You can't really wait for this event. And I've written articles about what they call the event in inverted commas, but
mm.
can't wait till it happens and say, oh, okay, I think I'll change now. You really, you really need to be prepared and working towards ascension.
Well,
Perhaps
they say that
just
they say that a new master will come. There will be but he will come in full aspect. So he won't be born through the womb of a woman. He will come in full aspect and land openly, and
okay.
then
Now,
that will,
just so before we run out of time completely on Darren Stretcher, I did want to ask, because when you first mentioned Aetherius, I thought I was familiar with it, but what I thought I'd read some years ago was that George King had identified someone who was already on the planet, um, who would be the new avatar or the new
no,
master. So
no.
now I am confusing with something else. That's all right. I thought I'd just ask you. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm confused with a different organization. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Master Aetherius, we don't know who he was. He was just a but he is an interplanetary being, I think from Venus as well, but he's just a communicator. He hasn't so Dr. King, he was the voice. He was an interplanetary being. He incarnated here. But yeah, it wasn't it wasn't that it was the master for the Aquarian age. Jesus was the master for the Piscean age. This is the idea of how few times these interplanetary beings come along. So yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting to read George King talk in 1959 about the age of Aquarius, where most of us didn't really get into it until the 60s. When they started singing that song, The Age of Aquarius.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was a little ahead of the game right there.
Yeah, well, it's so much. I mean, to be doing yoga, because he raised Kundalini. He became enlightened in London. He wasn't even in India. He did it all himself in London doing these practices. So, but hey, I think we're running out of time here. So
Yeah, indeed.
I would love to keep checking. I'd love to have you on again.
Well, what I might do next time is use a different computer in case that's responsible
Yeah,
for my strange photography going on today.
yeah. I want
As I said,
to. People want to see you.
it could be because when I was psyching myself up this afternoon, I'm generating too much energy for a camera. I don't know, but,
Yeah, but if you
all
send me
right. Well,
send me all those links and all that stuff, those people you mentioned, because I'm looking for more guests for the show, and it sounds like I've struck a gold mine with you. So
yes. Well, there's people you can talk to for sure. Yeah. So when I give you the links, I might give you some people's individuals' names as well. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right, brilliant.
So,
Thanks, Paul.
do you want me to do that straight away, or can I go and have my dinner now? Because it is after 7 p.m.
Yeah, in these coming days, no worries, mate. I'm going to put the episode online at the end of the week.
I'll,
So
I'll do that by tomorrow morning.
all
Okay. Well,
right.
again, apologies for that video. And thank you very much for having me on. And hope the listeners got something out of all my ramblings today.
No, definitely a really great chat.
Okay, Jack.
All right, mate.
Thanks. I'm talking again.
Good
See
night. Bye.
you. Bye.